Welcome to another podcast where we're just gonna talk marketing nerd stuff. That's how I call it. I'm not calling you a nerd, but I call myself a nerd.
No, it's my favorite, man. I'm
So-
looking forward to it.
Sitting here with another marketing nerd, really low key, someone who does some pretty cool stuff actually that I don't see a lot of people do. So that's why I invited you here. And yeah, because you are pretty low key, we're gonna get started with your journey and your story a little bit. So can you elaborate a little bit on how you got started in like the whole online marketing, building businesses, and going from there?
I think that my story is a little different probably than a lot of the online entrepreneurs that got started. I think some of them came from like network marketing or through ClickFunnels or from something different. But yeah, my name is Shawn Henry. The way that I got into it is when I was 15, I did a bunch of manual labor for a friend's dad. Basically like worked 2 weeks really, really hard installing fence posts to get $500. And at that point I was like, I don't want to do this ever again. So I was always like, I've always been involved in like, also via video games, but more into like the tech side and like online forums and things like that. And so what ended up happening is, I think by pure happenstance, I stumbled on somebody that was selling a piece of software that they built that they didn't want. It was a piece of it was like a productivity software for like parents and teachers or employers to make sure like whoever is using their computers is like not like surfing Facebook or like how much time they're doing that. But I was like, I think I can like do something with this. So I took $200 and had to figure out how to. So it took 200 of the 500, had to figure out how to fix it, spent on an Indian developer. They fixed the rest of it. And then I had basically $300 to figure out what to do and like how to sell it. And the way that I did that was online marketing, like early days, like Facebook ads, and had to market it that way. And so over the course of that summer, I was 14 at the time, built out that software, ended up like, making a good amount of money especially for a 15-year-old. But yeah, I mean, had to learn like how to sell my own software, my own business. Like I wasn't marketing for other people or courses or anything. Like I had to learn how to market a piece of software. And so from that, like ended up like selling that company, not for like a lot of money, but like a 5-figure, like selling it to somebody else, and then spun that up into all sorts of things. Web hosting, like a web hosting company, into like e-commerce stores with inventory, into consulting offers, and the whole time I was running ads. And then come time to my, I still had like that programming, like I go to college, right? So finally did a year at college, realized I was like, because I had sold my web hosting company at the time, and I didn't want to, I didn't have any business at the time. And I realized like I had more experience at age 18 in business than any of my professors at the university, any of them. So I was like, all right, definitely time to drop out. It was a very critical year for me because it allowed me to develop away from home and do things like that. So I think mindset-wise, there's probably an ROI on that. But I don't know. It was for me. Then from there, I was like, what do I know? Like, what do I know best? Above anything else, like what can I offer? And for me, I was like, oh, I know how to do this. Like I was marketing ads, like I knew how to run paid traffic. I knew how to do that. And so that filtered into starting my first lead gen agency. And then, the rest is history. But that's really how I got into the space, was just doing it for various businesses for myself. And then ended up rolling that into, starting the agency, which was, I think, definitely its own journey, but.
Yeah, like before we go there now, I didn't know this, so that's why this is so great. So what was your thought process you were 14 and you bought a software business then for $200?
Yeah, just a developer had built it maybe for fun, or they had an intent for it, but they were like, I don't want this. They're like, here. I mean, I had to like kind of like talk him down from like, I think he wanted more money, but I was like, I think he just wanted it off his plate and wanted some extra cash. Especially like developers, they just build things. So again, like.
So you were negotiating already at 14?
I was like, listen, buddy, I have this much money. This is what I can pay for it. And again, it worked out. And so that's how it spun off.
That's crazy. And then you started like marketing that. But I guess like, how old are you now?
26.
26. So
Yeah.
back in the day, there were no courses on how to market the software business with Facebook
Yeah.
ads, right? So
No.
what was your learning process? You were just like trying or like,
Yeah, I mean, just trying it. I mean, there were videos, like there are YouTube videos and like online forums and things like that like point you in the right direction. But like,
Yeah.
it was definitely like, yeah, trial and error. But and again, another blessing, like the costs on Facebook were not what they were now. So it's like, it gave me an opportunity to play around with that. And again, like all I needed was to I mean, I always talk about it now, but the hardest part of marketing online is 0 to 1. It's the first profitable sale or first few profitable sales. From there, it's off to the races. You can go 1 to infinity and you can keep going. But, you know, at the beginning, like that's the hardest part. So as soon as I was over that hump, then I was able to keep going. But before that, yeah, no.
and then you started your lead gen agency. Was that like just for everybody or just your?
I mean, I think like everyone, it started off for everybody, but then focused more in on chiropractors, built up that business, sold that company, and then I wanted to still do marketing, but for less people. And through a mutual friend, started to understand the, you know, having a stake in the game and getting rev shares and getting paid percentage of what you do, having less clients, things like that. And then I've been doing that over the last 4 years. And in the last 4 years, we've helped generate like a little over $540 million for our clients just from that specific business. So,
yeah. And how did you transition into the whole rev share thing? I mean, of course, you hear about it, you're like, hey, that sounds like a good idea, but you're doing pretty big numbers nowadays. How because you are not from Miami or LA, right? So from Colorado, you said, or you're living in Colorado now.
Yeah, from Colorado. I grew up there. I lived in LA for a bit, but Colorado was.
Yeah. So how did you come up with that idea? Like where you're like, oh, I really want to go
I
even bigger.
didn't come up with it. Like I said, so a mutual friend that you know of. Had been doing it for a long time, and he said that this is the way, and I was like, yeah, no, this is definitely the way. Like I would love to be able to have a piece of the growth that I'm bringing companies, and I think like we're really good at it. So I wanted to, I mean, it took a bit to figure out how to close those deals, but I've always been one for like almost like delusionally optimistic. Like I'm like, if they can do it, so can I. Like that's always my mentality. Like, if they can do it, I can do it. So I mean, it was for me. It was like I was always down for it. It made a ton of sense to me.
Got it. Yeah, it's funny. I had the same. It's like you believe, like if you see someone else do $1 million a month, you're like, okay, I could get them there.
Yeah.
It's like, but it's funny because I had something, I don't know how similar that was. Like I never really thought about like making 10K a month when I got started. But then this guy just started mentioning it and mentioning it. I'm like, okay, yeah, let's just do it. Let's try it, right? And that's, I guess, also kind of how it happened with the rev share ID. Just somebody planted the seed and you just took it and ran with it.
Yeah, and it's also like, why not? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Like conceptually, the idea makes sense. And so my favorite thing is taking like very complex. Like I spend so much time thinking about this, and you know this about me. Like I literally like I always have a different framework or a different like how can I take the most like the outcomes that should be very complicated and build the most simple, repeatable frameworks to be able to create it. Like all of our media buyers that have come out of our business that have created hundreds of millions of dollars, or at least helped create hundreds of millions of dollars, they all started from nothing, right? They all started like nothing as in like they had no prior experience. But that's how I prefer it because, again, I think the frameworks are so simple that I would rather take somebody that is willing to just take in simple concepts and repeat that to create repeatable outcomes instead of, and again, not to say there's exceptions to every rule, but
yeah, of course.
Yeah, no, it's like my favorite part of the whole thing. Just the opportunity to keep pushing the limits of what's possible, but making it very simple.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of have to, right? If you want to hire some team members and explain everything. Yeah. It's like you're not going to find someone like yourself who was starting at 40 years old and then figured out everything themselves who's going to work for you, right?
Yeah, for sure, man. 100%.
So I'm curious, like this was more something I was thinking about asking later in here, but now we're talking about it. Like what is kind of like your opinion on like the whole like, you know, hiring A players versus creating A players? Because sounds like you're more on the, or maybe you do both. You're more on the side of like, hey, I can teach. Because I always feel a little bit like, yeah, these people are really crushing it. They probably don't want to work for you. Or you need to really get them at the right time where they just got 3 kids and they just want some more stability and they want to chill. But what's your opinion in terms of, or like, how do you embody that in your hiring process? Are you looking for the A players, stealing away A players, or are you kind of trying to build them?
It depends on the position. I think like there are certain things that you don't want to waste time in doing things like salespeople. I think you hire A players.
Yeah.
Always. Like, you usually just do not have the luxury of spending time trying to invest calls and opportunities. Like, every time you're training them, like, again, every salesperson needs to train on calls and things like that. But with copywriters, I think that there's a massive benefit to hiring A players, although, again, like, I think that's such muddy waters because you have a lot of copywriters that say that they are A players and in theory could be A players, but it doesn't necessarily translate to the level of what we're talking about here. So I think fundamental skills, I've always like kind of like, there's a threshold that needs to be met in terms of, belief system. So, skill set and mindset, like, this is just how I conceptualize like identity, and identity creates results, right? So skill set is what you know and mindset is what you believe. And so skill set, it's like, do they have a base level skill set? Mindset, which is just their belief system, like, do they have the belief system that they, in theory can get to a point, like, at least like conceptually, to where they believe they can create hundreds of millions of dollars through their copy, because that creates ambition, that creates drive, that means they're looking at the data, like things like that. Like some things that I think are more difficult to train. But with media buyers, I think that it should be also, I think that should be typically trained from scratch. If they already understand things about the ads manager, things like that, all the better. So you don't have to like train the basics. But from there, like, I'd rather have a fresh slate, even for copywriters, if they apply it the right way. But it depends is the answer. But I think for some positions, also COO, like a COO typically, or like an integrator, I think they should have industry experience. Like, you don't want to have somebody that's basically matching you on your vision, that's going to be integrating or like attacking like specific action steps to like what your vision is, and having to pull them up the whole time. It defeats the purpose. If you're just starting, then maybe you have more time. But for, if you're already well on your way and the ship's moving, like, it doesn't make any sense to me to like train an integrator up from scratch at an advanced point in business. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's the same with salespeople. You don't want to wait 3 months before they start performing and get their shit together.
For sure. Yeah. But if you already have a sale, again, it's all contingent. If you already have a sales team that's up and running and they're creating deals and things like that, and you find somebody that's just so hungry, and you're like, okay, cool, I can start them up on less qualified leads, or like, you're not wasting revenue opportunity, but you create a platform for them to grow. There's always, again, exceptions to the rule, but you just have to be cognizant of like time to like leverage and return, because otherwise it's not worth it.
It's funny how you are really, there's this bias, right, where it's like black and white thinking. I think you are really aware to not think, is that happening in your mind all the time? Or like, okay, I don't want to think black and white, or I don't want to just generalize things, and because that's where I see a lot of things go wrong.
Yeah,
you think about that all the time, or?
I do, but I think there's 2 points, right? Like, I always believe what is true for you is true, right? So if I limit myself in sometimes the way I think, then I miss things. But I do also think that there's benefit. So instead of thinking things in terms of black and white, I believe that there is an alternative approach to it, which is you can be black and white up to a threshold, right? Especially in terms of my time, like how I respect my time and my people's time and like the opportunities that come our way. There's a threshold that has to be met in terms of opportunity, respect, belief management, leverage, time investment, things like that. That has to be met. From there, then there's play. Then you can start to play different sides of what's possible, or different approaches, or asking yourself, like, even as a marketer, I don't think that being black and white generally is like, you have to have a North Star. And like in our company, the principle is like, I don't want to be right. I want to make money.
Yeah.
I don't want to be right. I want to make money. So it's like thinking like, oh, this is the best way and this is the best approach and this is how things are and things like that. It's like that limits you in terms of your belief system. For us, you just come back to a principle. I don't want to be right. I want to make money. So it's like the question is, oh, does this work better or does this work better? I don't know. I don't want to be right. I want to make money. I start with what I think is going to work best, and then I'm going to open up to potentials, and I'm going to use the data to be able to make decisions to be able to make even more money. But I don't want to be right. I want to make money. And so like just comes back to that. And again, making money within also different values too. So, you know, like putting people first, like always investing into your people, like not pushing people to the side. Your reputation is everything. Like not choosing money over everything. It's just in regards to your ego. I don't want to be right. I want to make money.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Going back a little bit to the copywriting, hiring copywriters, where are you finding those people? Are you looking in those free Facebook groups, or do you hate the free Facebook groups and you're kind of...
It's just, yeah, man, it's everywhere. Like look everywhere. Always put your feelers out and have basics, like have a standardized process where you can funnel people through.
Yeah.
You know, like we have GTPs that run our full, like AI that run our full like QA framework now, which I've talked to you about, like to be able to see like which of our applicants maybe is producing like, you know, quote unquote better copy. And then we'll tier people through. So the people that do the best within that, we'll bring them in on trial basis. We'll launch their copy to see like on a consistent basis, see how they're like actually looking at it, taking feedback, things like that for the first month, because we can test a lot in a month as you bring people in, and then whoever meets the cut, then they're who you keep. And otherwise, and then again, having standards, like they have to hit deadlines, they have to do things like that. But yeah, I mean, whether it's free Facebook groups or you're looking more traditional, like Indeed has potential, LinkedIn has potential.
Yeah.
But again, it just depends.
Have you tried running ads for copywriters?
No, it's not. It could work, but in theory, you're gonna save more time going to groups or Indeed or something like that for specific things than running a Facebook ad for copywriters. But some people love it. I know people that find copywriters and salespeople and all sorts of things.
Yeah, sales and setters. I like that. Yeah, just to keep the the lead flow, and then just always hire a new setter, a new salesperson, and then.
Yeah, I think like if you need to, like as you, I mean, you know, like as you start to spend a lot more money on ads, like you're gonna need to hire more salespeople. You need to have a bigger like sample size of interviewees to be able to filter through to the best. And so, but again, it's just a different situation. Sales is like you have to get, as you spend more money on ads and you have more calls and you have more lead volume, you have to hire more salespeople. That's not necessarily true for copywriters. One copywriter could be responsible for as much revenue as you could conceptually think of. It doesn't necessarily. And also in our, like, we're not playing the quantity game. We're not like, hey, we're going to write this much copy for you and do that. At the end of the day, like our clients know, like we're going to get results, but it's not about quantity output. It's about making sure like one piece of copy or one creative or things like that. We just need really good stuff at scale. So.
Yeah, let's go a little bit there, because you're saying like, hey, we are not like quantity focused, but I guess you because I've watched one of your videos where you're talking about like, hey, which bottlenecks will arise and how do you prevent them, right? So I assume you're not waiting for ads to fatigue before you write new copy. So do you have, for like, let's talk a little bit more about copywriters. Do you have process in place where it's like, hey, we're doing this and this and this every week, we're doing this and this every month, and this every quarter, or?
Yeah, in part. So everything, coming back to frameworks, everything that our company does comes down to one thing, which is you have a goal for your client within your own business. If you have a goal, say it's 50 million a year or $100 million a year, it's not that I want to hit that in 50 years. You want to hit it as quickly as possible or within a certain time frame. And so, this is just combined from a lot of different people that either have been mentors or friends in my life, but I believe that the most important equation in business that needs to be paid attention to is the speed equation, because it's not, I want to hit this goal in X amount of time, or like in 50 years, I want to hit it quickly.
Yeah.
So I believe that speed of growth in business comes down to your ability to quickly and accurately identify and solve problems in order of revenue generating potential. If you're ever growing slower than you want to be, you're like, fuck, well, like, why am I not growing faster? It's either you're not identifying problems accurately, you're like misidentifying problems, you're not identifying problems quickly enough, or you're not solving problems in order of revenue generating potential. You might be doing those two, but you're focusing on the wrong problems to solve. As you solve problems, you make more money. That's just how growth in business works. So your question is, what are you doing on a week to week basis, right?
Yeah.
For us, our whole system is built to be able to do that at scale, like from like alerts to, we actually use AI agents now that go through all of like everything, and they're pulling out the information that we need based off of SOPs, just to be an extra layer of finding bottlenecks and what's working, what's not working, all of these things. But for us, on a week to week, month to month basis, it's not, hey, how much output do we need? It's as soon as we find winners or things that are working, then we're right away, our copy team is going to start creating like quality, repeatable, or like repeating successful actions. Like, what is similar? Like, what are angles and hooks that we can do that are similar that maybe touch something else? It's like strip mining, right? It's like you're going through and you're finding veins of gold that work really, really well. And then hopefully around that, you're going to follow a repeatable process to do that again and again and then again and again. So to like simplify it, on a week to week basis, it's a flywheel. I don't believe that in advertising, you should have, this is again, everything with a grain of salt, everyone has their own approach. But for us, I don't believe that the solution is to have as many winning campaigns as possible, because like, and what I mean by that is like to have quantity of output in terms of campaigns. I would rather have 80% of my budget. Let's say I'm spending 15K a day. I'd rather have 80% of my budget down to 5 campaigns or 3, like core campaigns is what we call them. Because if I want to take that 15K a day to 50K a day or 100K a day, which is what we do like consistently, then I don't want to have to pull 16 different levers to be able to do that. I need a majority of my budget in core campaigns because it makes the process more simple. It's the same thing in terms of like, okay, I'm worried about fatigue. Amazing. So if 80% or 70% of my budget is in core campaigns, 20% of my budget is in testing, 10% of my budget's in retargeting, generally, again, every client's going to look somewhat different, but trying to simplify. As soon as we find new winners, then those are what we call, it's like in baseball, like you're on deck, right? Or, you know, anything. You're on deck. Those tests that have now been winners are now on deck. If anything in our core campaign starts to fatigue, then we start to graduate that campaign into core campaign, scale it up. It's the same thing. Like all the time as we find in that new test that's now on deck, we've already created like different tests around that are very similar to see if we can repeat that. And if we have even more tests on deck, they will remain on deck until our core campaigns start to fatigue. Or if we want to keep scaling our budget and we have the room to, then we'll just start to ascend those. And now 80% of our budget will now represent maybe 6 or 7 campaigns. But again, now we'll be at 20K a day or 30K a day. It just depends on the overall structure of the account and how much they can actually scale. It's usually a sales bottleneck though. Yeah.
Let's not go there because then we're all going to be crying here in our chairs.
Yeah.
If we talk about sales. Yeah, that's actually interesting. Like, so what you are saying is like, I'd rather have like one big ID or like 2 or 3 big IDs because then you only need to create new hooks and new iterations for those than have like 20 of them and you have to be creating new stuff constantly for those.
And it's about budget management too. When you're playing the game of 50K a day spend, 100K a day spend, 150K a day spend, it's also about budget management. If you want your ROAS to be high, but you're having to manage 50 different campaigns or individual ad sets with individual budgets, it's not only a lot harder, but as you start to scale, again, fatigue still happens regardless. You need it's just a flywheel for us, but I would rather have less campaigns carrying majority of the budget, but still have like tests on deck that I can quickly ascend, with spend to be able to keep up with fatigue and things like that. It makes budget management, you can call it budget management, but like cost management when it comes to your spending, when you're spending, again, like a lot more money than most people would think. If you're spending 3K a day or 5K a day, even 10K a day, sometimes on ads, you're not gonna you're not necessarily going to run into that issue.
Yeah.
But that's why I try to keep things as simple as possible, because otherwise your budget just falls apart, and then you end up, as you scale, you now go from a 7x to a 2x or a 3x. That's one of the reasons that happens.
Yeah, I mean, if you have 100 ad sets, right, and you start to raise the budget in all of them and take it down a little bit, and you just have to calculate that stuff all the time. That takes like an hour a day then to keep it.
Yeah, and it's almost like in all practice, it's probably unmanageable. I think that's one of the reasons like most people never get to 50K a day or 100K a day in spend, which is, again, I know significant numbers, but I do believe it's possible for a lot of offers. It's just people don't understand. It's hard to manage that at scale. And you have to keep a simple machine to be able to fix. It's not a question of if something's going to break, it's a question of when. Yeah. So you have to have something that's easily able to fix, so you don't just hit a point, you're growing, and then you get slapped back down. You grow and you get slapped back down every time.
Yeah. And I guess, or that's my personal opinion, I think that's also where creative people sometimes lose, because it's not only about being creative, it's just about being creative consistently and just keep chipping away at it at that skill. Yeah. And it's
interesting you bring this up. I think that, again, you being creative, it's very important.
Yeah.
But I've been fascinated by like some of the top spending like affiliate marketers in the world, like that spend money on ads, because they're working off of like tiny margins.
Yeah.
They are some of the people that are spending the most money in ads in the entire world, like millions of dollars a day in ads. So it's like most of those people, and again, I'm not saying I agree with this, but this is what's fascinating, is their whole game is repeating successable actions. How quickly can I take something from this industry and just put it here? Like they're literally like, I've seen people that their level of creativity is basically zero.
Yes.
But they're some of the most successful marketers that I know.
Yes.
And so it's like, yes, I think there is an aspect of creativity. I think the goal is not to just rip people off. That's not what I'm saying. But I think you can't always just bottleneck yourself into thinking that copy and creative is just this creative bubble that, you have to put out good ideas. It's like, there's a game. You can't be repeatable and create results consistently if that's the game that you're playing every single time. It's just not going to work.
Yeah, I mean, I would even say there's an argument for if you find the winning ad of your competitor and you are just better at like copying that and coming up with new hooks and kind of making it a little bit different every time. You might outperform your competitor. And
if you know how to if you know how to manage budget better and you know how to do those things, then you're going to be able to do that. Now, again, I think shamelessly copying the same exact thing, and you also get into like arguable legal stuff there too.
Of course,
so it's like, I think taking concepts that you're able to then improve on is just a hallmark of, marketing. And again, like some of the top campaigns nowadays are just rehashed from, the marketers in the 20s and the 30s. So I don't know. You see the same framework, same for like how much is original at this point.
Yeah, if you read Ogilvy on advertising and you look at those ads and you look at what we're doing right now, it's like
it's very similar.
Yeah, at least in terms of headlines, maybe it's not as long and not as textual, but it's
no, for sure.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, that's funny. So you mentioned a lot of big numbers, spending 50 to 100K a day. What is like the highest daily spend that you've ever achieved for yourself or for a client?
We've had clients that are spending upwards of 200K a day.
200K.
Yeah, that's like, but that client was kind of filtering back and forth between like 150, 200K a day. It was a lot.
Depending on availability or what was?
Yeah. It's also like, sales availability, the different constraints on like, okay, like, hey, on, availability on, Saturday, Sunday. As marketers, we hate this, right? But it's like availability on Sunday and Saturday, Sunday might be worse when it comes to their salespeople. So then you scale down. Week, yeah, it just depends. So, but yeah, different constraints. As you start to hit those, there's just things that most people don't consider, but you just have to work around it. Yeah,
and then it's also starting to get complicated because there's a few extra variables that you have to start looking at.
Yeah, for sure. But that's also when I think it gets fun. You start to. There's a game beyond the game. There's a game beyond. Most people are trying to break through a certain thing, and then, I would love to, Yeah. I mean, we have some pretty ambitious, like my overall goal within the agency is to do $1 billion a year in sales for our clients. So we have to keep pushing in order to, in order to hit that. But I think that, again, part of the fun game is continuing to find the right clients. And that's all high ticket. Everything we do at this point, I've scaled e-commerce brands, I've done software. But for me, like anything we focus on now, it's kind of like 2 criteria. Like obviously they already need to be up and running as a successful business doing over, $1 million a year, but more commonly like 5 million a year, 10 million a year.
Yeah.
They have to like have a high ticket product, at least like say over, minimum 5K, but typically 10K, 15K minimum.
Yeah.
And they have to rely on sales calls. That's our criteria. Those are the only clients that we take on at this point.
And I guess you're also looking outside of the, let's say, infos page and coach.
Oh, for sure. 100%. Yeah. I mean, across the board, like very high ticket, like consulting, training, software, very high ticket products. Even like into like certain things I've been looking at are like even into art and things like that, like selling like very high ticket art. And like, that's my ambition is around like being the best in the world about selling like high ticket and sales calls. But
sales calls, funnels, and high ticket.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some cool stuff you can start doing,
Yes.
And sure. So, but yachts would also be something, private planes.
Oh, we're already on it.
Doing some stuff in that space.
Both. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. We were not going to share any names. That's what we agreed on off camera.
There's even more high ticket beyond that. Like,
can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, in energy and things like that, like contracts for like energy and reason that
like getting into governments and.
No, not necessarily. Like sometimes you're just like whether it's energy or resources or things like that. Like, but yeah, there's some really cool plays to be made that I think most marketers don't think about.
Got it, and I guess real estate as well, but a lot of marketers think about that. High-end real estate.
It's different. I think there's some things like when you're looking at like commercial real estate and residential, it's a little different.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, selling companies, brokering deals, things like that.
Yeah.
There's a lot that can be played in that space, which I think is very exciting because the payouts are much bigger than in the info space.
Yes, that's where you start. Did you ever spend like 200K a day in the info space?
No, not like, no. I think the most we ever spent on the info space is maybe like 85, 90K a day, something like that.
Yeah.
Like pure info space. Like we've done like financial services and things like that, but not in the info space. Because at some point you run into where the product is limited by the capacity of the offer, either in terms of coaches or you've chosen a very small subsect of niche. Like the world doesn't know about, as big as it is right now, the world, your average American does not know about most info product offers. They just have no clue. They've not even heard of it. It's not even on their radar. And so at some point you get into where you get into the greater populace of, what are people aware of? And are you selling offers that you have to educate people on before they'll even buy? Which again, limits you in terms of scale to a point. Because then you're educating a giant population of people versus, selling them something they're already aware of or need, which basic marketing. But
although that also has a lot of upside if you figure it out.
Certainly,
but it's a risk.
Certainly, and again, you have to cultivate it. It's time. You're working with time, which is fine. I think there's still opportunity for that.
Yeah. That's also why I like the make money offers so much, because if it's like a niche in a niche, then you just know like, oh my God, I have to refresh and come up with creative stuff or like new hooks all the time, and then you're still gonna push only a certain market size, and you're not there yet, unless if there, I guess.
So my recommendation to anyone that is in that, either you own a business or you're marketing for that, whether the make money online stuff, is you can play the hook game, and you will, and you have to. But my recommendation is aggressively attack new unique mechanism.
Yeah, 100%.
It's just a game of unique mechanisms. So how can you consistently, once a quarter, once every couple months, create unique mechanisms that nobody's ever seen before?
Yeah.
Even if it's very similar delivery, you have to package it up in a way that like people haven't seen before.
Yeah.
That's always my approach if I'm working on some kind of offer like that.
Yeah. And that's also where kind of business and marketing meet, right? Because it's like if the business owner because sometimes the best thing to do is also just to solve a problem that the people have that they're buying, and then you unlock a new part of the market, or it becomes easier to sell.
Oh, for sure.
Like especially
That's the fun part, though.
Yeah, but then business owners have to want to do that. But
for sure, I agree. I think that that also comes down to I think a lot of agencies are used to being the authority at the beginning, right? Like you get hired because you're an authority.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden you find yourself 2 months later, 3 months later, just doing whatever the business owner says.
Yes.
And there's very, very intentional ways that you can structure a relationship and frame, and being able to do that to make sure that doesn't happen, so that you can remain the authority. If you are the authority, they will take your advice. As soon as you lose that, and it's very hard to get it back, you're not going to be able to impose new ideas, unique mechanisms. You don't have that anymore, because really what you become is just a team member.
Yeah.
You're underneath them. If they see themselves, like right here, if you're looking at things in terms of relationships, if they hire you because you're an authority in terms of status, like in the context of this relationship, you're here and they're here, their business is underneath them. What most agency owners do, and this is what I've seen over and over and over again, or just even in business or relationships, what at most of the time happens is you're an authority here, you get hired. But then what ends up happening is you are like, oh, I'm going to be part of your business, underneath your business, right? I'm going to be fulfilling for your business. In theory, that's fine. In terms of status and authority, you were here, they were here, their business was underneath them, you get slotted under the business, and then authority's gone. Give it 2 months, 3 months, and it's completely degraded. The relationship is completely different, and that's the reason why. You can't allow that to be the core frame of how they perceive the relationship, because at the end of the day, they're hiring you because you're an authority, but if they don't take your advice, you don't stay like that. It's not going to work. You're going to lose that. And then eventually you're going to lose the relationship regardless, because you become a commodity to them.
Yeah. Yeah. Or you cannot tell them what they have to do to scale, and then they, after 3 months, like, nothing happened, we need a new guy. And then you're out. What else are you doing? Like, so I guess, I mean, that one seems quite obvious to me, but not to everybody, I guess, to not help them with their service delivery. Or you maybe help them with the service delivery in certain scenarios, but then you really pre-frame it, or
to maintain authority.
Yeah. What are you doing to avoid that kind of stuff, right? What are the things?
The simplest thing that I see people do is twofold. One is they start to play into the frame. Pre-framing is everything, right? Yeah. So if I'm gonna pre-frame and look at something, I'm gonna say like, hey, listen, like when we come in, like our clients, like this works because I'm held accountable to produce results for you.
Yeah.
In order for this to work, even when we're in month 3, month 4, month 6, 12 months in, this has to stay the same, because as we go through, we have to have a relationship where like, you hired me so that I can help make you more money. You really believe in that, right? And they're like, yeah, 100%. And be like, okay, awesome. So when we get 6 months in, 3 months in, 6 months in, 12 months in, you're pre-framing, like literally pre-framing anything, like how it could play out in the future at the beginning, so that you're maintaining in their head how they see as an authority. That's once it happens, but you still have to maintain that. What I see a lot of people do is they get in and they're like, hey, yeah, no, like, okay, we're in here. Like, if you see anything that you need from us, or you need my attention on anything, let me know. As soon as that, it seems very innocent, right? Like, it seems fine. But as soon as you start to play that, like, you are hired as an authority. As soon as you say, like, hey, whatever you need, let me know. Or, hey, if you need anything, let me know. Or, hey, like, any of those things, it's not going to work. So, like, again, it's not to say that you can't do that. But if you want to maintain status and authority, as somebody that's being hired as an expert, even if you are, I see this over and over and over again. It's this frustration. I dealt with this for a long time. But again, once you understand the dynamic is like, You're allowing yourself, like any kind of frame, interaction, any casual thing that you say that plays into the idea that your team are underneath their team. And again, fine, work with them, collaborate with them, create results. I'm not saying that. But in terms of how they perceive the relationship, you still need to be an authority, because if you try to give them something that's going to make them more money and they don't listen to it, then it only hurts them. So you have to, again, it's collaboration. It can be partnership. I'm not saying that you think you're above them, but you need to understand, not you specifically, but business owners or service providers need to understand that, like, you can't allow yourself in any frame or any interaction with the client to be placed underneath their business, because as soon as that happens, then status and authority are lost. Respect is lost. It's not the same anymore.
Yeah, and it's hard to come back from that, because I've noticed those situations sometimes where maybe it was not even on me that I messed up the status, or at least I didn't notice it. And then you have to have that conversation and be like, hey, listen, like, if we're going to keep doing this, like, it's not going to work, or we're going to get the same results. And I don't want, like, it's not going to work, right? And then you get that little spike of, okay, yeah, let's do it. But then you lose it again next month, right? Because
I think it's almost impossible.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's almost impossible. In theory, you could do it by, like, saying you're going to walk away.
Yeah.
Like, listen, like, you brought me in for a reason. I've created X, Y, and Z results.
Yeah.
This is what's happened in the last month, all of these things.
Yeah.
But
it's hard.
Yeah, I mean, what you have to do is you would have to create a partial break in the relationship with the client, and then bring it back together.
Yeah, you have to hurt them a little bit to be able to rearrange the pieces.
Shake up.
Emotionally,
you know shake up the frame. I know what you mean.
Yeah, you don't have to really break them, but, like, I mean, actually maybe hurt them a little bit, where it's like, but it's
let them know or remind them of the original frame. You have to get them uncomfortable, because it's a very comfortable frame. Even for me as a business owner, if you have to consistently remind and understand that frame between and how status and respect plays out, especially in the business world, but that's in life in general.
Yeah. Funny. Yeah, no, I feel the same. Like, that I don't have any regrets, but sometimes I'm like, taking on something that was not really working for the money, but you always get disappointed, because it's just too hard to change. So I had this one story where I scaled someone up, and then they were like, oh yeah, now it's too expensive. They didn't want to negotiate. They just hired someone else. The whole business went to shit. You know what I mean? Then you come back in again, but then the frame it's really hard to get it back. Or I didn't do it properly. I don't want to say it's impossible. It's just didn't do it properly. And then you kind of get in this, and then the same thing happens again. Then it goes well, and they're trying to looking to hire someone else, and you're like, oh my god, we literally went through this.
I played through that many times. So it's definitely the things you learn the hard way. But at the end of the day, for me, I created this outcome because of who I am. And so if I keep creating the same outcome over and over and over and over again, it's because of me. And so again, talking about thresholds and identity, it's skill set and mindset. It's either what I know, my skill set, or it's what I believe. And either one of those, or accumulation of both, is creating the cause and effect relationship of my life. And so if that's creating the outcome, and that's what I keep seeing over and over and over again, or that's how it plays out, even if it's 6 months down the road, then I need to aggressively attack that, so that the cause and effect is representative of whatever outcome that I'm trying to create.
Yeah. So I guess, like, because you're playing it pretty big, that there's also some competitors. Maybe you don't like the word competitors, but there's people that probably want to take on the projects that you are also running, right? I'm curious how you deal with it. Like, does it ever happen that the client is like, or like the partner, or however you want to call it, that's like, that they want you to compete with someone else?
Not after the relationship is created. Mm-hmm. There's been a handful of times where you go in and they're like, hey, we're going to keep the existing team. Yeah. But again, I don't. It's all about how you pre-frame the beginning and how you maintain frame throughout the relationship. In my experience, if you maintain authority as somebody that's an expert, they will always look to you for help.
Yeah.
because you are the person they look up to,
Yeah.
both like in business, but also like in terms of status. Because again, you have something that they want and you've produced an outcome that they want. So it's like exceptions to every rule, but universally, if a client comes to me because they're like, hey, I want you to compete with this new person, it's because I have not done, and the team, you know, and the way we've managed that relationship has not been appropriate. And that's created that outcome. Because again, if something is going wrong, if something is going wrong and it's just not working the way that they anticipated, then we have not probably managed the relationship as we should have.
Yeah.
Because otherwise they would look to us for the solution.
Yeah.
And if they aren't, then we haven't maintained what we want.
Yeah, that's fair. All right. Radical accountability, check.
Yeah, but more than that, it's like, there's also a lot more practical way to look at it that most people don't talk about. Yes, it is accountability, because if you want to have, you know, a semblance of control of the outcome,
Yeah.
yes, of course you have to take like accountability. But instead of looking at it as an accountability, I think the most appropriate way to look at it in business is cause and effect. Like, how can I change the cause? Like, the effect is whatever is happening right now, right? Whatever is going on right now is the effect.
Yeah.
The cause is, however, I showed up, my team showed up, my business showed up. Yes, of course, there's like some outside circumstances, but almost universally, like you can say it's within those things. So all of those things are the cause, and the effect is whatever is happening right now. It's the same thing. If you want to create, I've been working, I'll explain it. It's too much to talk about on this camera, but I'm sure I'll talk to you more, you know, as we spend time together the next few days. But I'm kind of like short-term dubbing it systems theory, which is the idea that if you want to create a $50 million a year business, a $100 million a year business, $1 billion a year business, that is an effect. It is the effect of a cause, right?
Yep.
But most business owners ask themselves, what do I need to do right now? How do I fix a bottleneck? How do I fix problems? That's how I thought about things for a long time. The problem is it's not an ongoing feedback loop. It is a circumstantial or input-based feedback loop based off of what you're aware of at any given time. Like, I see this problem, I'm going to fix it. I see this problem, I'm going to fix it. The thing that I think has been an absolute game changer is, instead of seeing things that way, which again, I know this is conceptual, but it has seemed to help our clients and also us in a very significant way. So instead of looking things in terms of radical accountability, things like that, looking at it in terms of cause and effect. If I want this client to be a client that stays with me for, you know, many, many years, and they're doing millions of dollars a month and I'm getting paid awesome rev shares, then I need to be very cognizant of the beginning of what are the causes that I can put in place, the system, the ongoing feedback loop that is using the inputs that I'm getting from this client relationship, all of these things, that like any kind of like this full awareness of, you know, problems or things like that, but it's all under the context of this outcome, this effect that I'm trying to create. So what is the $10 million a year or $50 million a year cause? What is the system that I can build that is the cause of that right now, to the effect, both in how I show up, how my team show up, and things like that. So it's like, I think observing the relationship of cause and effect has, instead of like, you know, specific principles like, you know, personal accountability, which might be a part of it, but it's like, what is the cause that I can apply to make sure this never happens again? What is the cause that created this outcome? And how can I create a system that avoids that or creates near certainty in the outcome that I'm trying to produce? It's just a different way to look at things, but it seemed to be very beneficial, like at least for our team.
Yeah, I get it, because accountability is kind of like in the here and now. So you're like, okay, this happened, what could I have done? But like you just said, it might have happened a couple of months earlier. And by looking at the cause and effect, you're kind of like broadening the time horizon a little bit and not just looking in the here and now. Well, it might have already happened, like you said, the status thing 3 months ago.
For sure. And the cool part is it's reference-based. So now that you go forward and you have a new client relationship, and you've already considered, like, I want this relationship to, I want to make this amount of money, I want to have it for this amount of time, I want to do all these things.
Yeah.
Now you can actively assess if the actions and the things that in the person you're showing up as, the people your team is showing up as, the actions that are being taken, you can actively assess, are these, let's just say your goal for that client is, you know, 3 million a month, 5 million a month, or for your business is like, I want to do 30 million a year plus, right?
Yeah.
Are these $30 million a year causes to create that outcome? And if and it's very black in that respect, you will see things very clearly, because you'll be like, no, this action that I'm taking, this thing that we're doing, the way that I'm talking to this client is not a $30 million cause, a year cause to that $30 million a year effect. And it allows you to have the cognizance to say, hey, I need to switch this. So now it's not just, hey, I need to fix this. You just ask yourself, okay, what would be the $30 million a year cause in this instance? Like, how do I adjust this to make this, you know, or at least, again, it's nothing is set in stone. It's not going to create 100% outcome that you're going to create, but at least it gives you a context-based relationship saying, I want this outcome. Is this the cause to this effect, or at least a potential cause to this effect, which allows you to consistently be evaluating what's happening right now to, I think, at least have better perspective than just saying like, oh, I see this problem, let me fix this problem.
Yeah.
Or I need to take accountability, I'm gonna do this, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny in business is most of the time, like a lot of people look really at a short time horizon. And that's at some point gonna hold them back. And then you have to use some kind of way to escape from that. Like, I mean, that's what they call working in your business and on the business, but that's still kind of like practical, but it's like not really looking at, okay, how is this gonna develop in 3, 6, 12 months? Actually, now we talk about that, like that's something that I realized with partnerships and clients that I could do better of, is always make sure, and I guess that's kind of cause and effect, like that I'm like, hey, you have the goal, you are projecting like the next quarter or even the next 6 months or the next, year, because that's also like, if you want a long-term relationship, right, why are you not scheduling a whole year, right? At least a little bit, right? So that there's like a vision and an idea. And that's something I need to do more of. And then also connect like kind of like action steps to those in the quarter and the month. So I'm curious, like, what is your process for like just evaluating these things and like coming up with your, like for yourself and for clients with your annual plan, months, weeks? What is your like reflection feedback loop that you use currently?
So the short answer is systems theory, right? The entire system is built to be a giant feedback loop.
Yeah.
But in order to accomplish that, again, without getting too much into it, every greater system has subsystems.
Yeah.
So meaning if the greater system of your business has subsystems like media buying or client delivery or sales or things like that, each system is built to be a cause to the goal.
Yeah.
So let's just say your core business, let's say, I don't know, what's a goal that you want to hit right now in your business?
$1 million a month.
Okay, you want to hit $1 million a month, right? So you create the outcome, like you create the system for the $1 million a month feedback loop, and everything is based around that macro perspective. Then underneath you have lead generation, for example. Well, in order to hit $1 million a month, then I need to onboard one new client every single week or every 2 weeks or every month. That is making at least X. That is the goal. That is the only thing that team focuses on.
Yeah.
They don't focus on $8 million a month. They don't focus on anything else. That is the feedback loop. If they're trying to produce that outcome. If they're unable to produce that outcome, right, then either they're fixing and upgrading components within that system, like within that subsystem autonomously. This also allows your business to run more automatically. But the feedback of them being off track from that specific outcome gets filtered up to you, right? Then, and again, to make a long story short, because it is a little more of like a nuanced and more like graphical, like it'd be easy for me to like draw it out. But the biggest system, right, your 8 million a month, your only goal is to upgrade the components underneath. So if that subsystem that's responsible for bringing on, one, and they're unable to achieve that within their own system and they're not able to upgrade like autonomously, That's where you come in. That feedback comes to you, and then you go and you upgrade the individual components, either the people, the tools, the resources, the technology, the things like that, that need to be able to do that. And so then you look at the same thing. You as the CEO play the role as you have almost like a garden or like an ecosystem underneath that you're helping be a caretaker for.
Yeah.
So if it's growing on its own and it's autonomous, amazing. But if something's off track, that's the feedback loop. You have to have a system that's built in to being able to, you're filtering up that core data. And if something is off track, then you're able to address and be a caretaker for a system that should be autonomous. And so you start with your yearly goal, right? Like, how am I conceptualizing this? So my yearly goal, that's the hierarchical, top level of the system. The only objective for that is to hold the macro in perspective, which is that goal. Make sure that these individual subsystems they are the cause, they have the right people, the right tools, everything is at the level to be able to create their individual outcomes. Lead gen is one really, really good client every other week. Sales is they need to close at 20% or 30%. Client delivery is that within 1 month or 2 months, you need the client to be on track to be break even on their investment, or within the first month, you need them to be break even and or even more successful within their investment, or you need them generating X amount of book calls within a certain amount of time. That's the only thing that team focuses on.
Yeah.
And if that's off track in any capacity, and they're unable to fix it internally, right? Because sometimes it's hard to fix the picture when you're inside the frame, right? Their goal is to produce that outcome consistently. If they're not, that's where, again, feedback gets filtered up to the higher level system, and then you're able to go in, upgrade core components, make sure that it's on the level, and then as a byproduct, that should be the cause that creates the outcome. If it's not, again, you have to keep upgrading the core components. Keep upgrading the core components until that creates the cause to the effect that you're trying to do. Then you have the next subsystem, right? Now, again, sometimes you might have even subsystems under, if it's a big enough organization or a complicated enough system, you might have subsystems under subsystem. But that's how I conceptualize, because at the end of the day, I need an ecosystem that is self-reflective, able to take its own feedback, but I'm also not saying that it should just be, if it's not creating the outcome that it needs to, it's not the goal of the ecosystem or that subsystem to be able to have self-awareness enough to say, I need to upgrade myself. I'm gonna go and do that. No, the goal of the higher level system is that's your job. That's the goal, or your executive team, or whatever. You go in, you upgrade the core components, and does it create the outcome? Yes or no? No. Then you fix it, you keep upgrading components. But that's how I'm thinking of it. It's all cause and effect with the starting point of the bigger system. So again, a little bit more nuanced, but I think it's important to look at it that way, because otherwise, hey, here's my goal, here are my action steps for the goal. Great, but that has nothing to do with feedback. It's not ongoingly, actively oh, am I doing this many outreaches? It's no, you have to have a system that is self-dependent and has its own perspective. It's almost impossible, in my experience, if you have an actual team, to manage micro and macro at the same time. You need somebody that has macro perspective, and it's their goal to upgrade core components so that micro is a little more fixed. And you need micro to focus on micro, which is just execution, execution, execution to the highest level that it can. If the highest level that it can isn't good enough, it's not its job to fix it. It's the hierarchy's, or the upper level system's job to come in and upgrade core component until that goal is inevitable, because again, you've built the cause to the effect, which is the goal.
Got it. And you are tracking all this stuff, in terms of KPIs.
Your system is tracking. The system is, And I see what I need to see within the system. My team, if they are part of the X system that is managing the feedback from the lower system, then they're getting the feedback. And if they're unable to do that, then obviously that's where I would come in and apply even higher level perspective to upgrade the core components underneath that. Doesn't happen a lot, but that would be obviously my goal as a caretaker of the system as a whole.
Got it. So you look at the macros, you probably don't use Excel sheets, or maybe you do use Excel sheets, but you use something to visualize the data at the macro level. And below that, there's all these subsystems with like, let's say, micro data, and that's where your operators or
Yeah, they would only
employees
have
are.
visibility on that.
Yeah,
The systems only have visibility on what they need to.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then you're also nowadays using AI to kind of do quality control / double check and look for bottlenecks or blind spots.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we have, yeah, not to talk about it too much, but yeah, we're using AI in a way that I think that a lot of people have not. And it not only allows us to identify blind spots, but communicate with the right people in the right ways and do some certain tasks. I'll talk to you more about it. Maybe that's one thing I can't talk about quite yet until we're executing.
I mean, this is not an AI podcast, so that's fine. So
yeah, but it's been very cool. I think that's definitely one of the things that excites me the most about what we have going on. It makes us very significantly different.
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's just so much stuff that you can miss as a human that AI will probably not miss.
For sure.
As long as you define it properly and set up the systems in a way that it can read it.
Yeah, no, it's definitely an interesting prospect. I think you have to grow with it. It's happening whether we want it or not. So might as well use it the best way we can.
Yeah. Are you?
I think it's really exciting though.
Yeah, little side
tangent.
Are you using AI nowadays for copy and creative as well, or not that much?
Some. Yeah.
How far are you with that?
Pretty far. Yeah.
So you
like it creates
it
creates. I would say 60% of our top performers are AI at this point.
Good.
Yeah.
That's
and I
nice.
mean, not just like output, but like actually like performing, converting is AI at this point. 40% is people, 60% is AI at this point. Mm-hmm.
So what I find the hardest right now with AI is it's one thing to make AI create, let's say, the copy or the audio or the video, but you need to find the right, input, audience research to put it in there. Did you kind of systemize the whole like market research part as well with AI, or how are you?
And you have to, the insight that I would give to that is that the GPT that you build, or again, this is where prompt engineering is very important.
Yeah.
But the GPT that you build has to be capable of going through that full process itself. If you're a copywriter, right, the best copywriters do their own research.
Yeah.
Because they need to know very, very well every little piece that they need to know before writing the copy.
Yeah.
It's not that you have a separate audience research and then copy, or you can feed it. Like in theory, I guess you could paste it, but it doesn't. In our experience, it doesn't work. You have to have a GPT that is properly trained on the right things, but is also capable of like the right copy and to be able to write it the right way and all of these things, but it also has to be able to do the market research first.
Yeah, I think that's what's missing with most people when they use AI. It's like there's no market research, or there's there's nothing.
Yeah.
They just randomly write a prompt that they copy paste from Copy Accelerator or somewhere.
And in theory, you might be able to create something that works, but I want consistency and I want
scalability.
Really good copy.
Yeah.
I want damn good copy if we're gonna put it out, especially if it's AI. But again, it's even to our clients. Like, my goal is just to find what works and make them as much money as humanly possible.
Yeah.
Not necessarily like save cost. Actually, our team is not cost efficient at all. I'd rather spend more money on the team to make sure that the quality and our output is better, because on the back end, we'll make the money because we're making our money for the clients, and then we'll make more money as a whole. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I love about high ticket. It kind of gives you the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, you got the margins.
It's like if you know, okay, we're going to sell 10 jets next month, or like this month you already sold 10 of them. Out of nowhere, you can hire the best guy, maybe even from
100%.
Whatever, Apple or whatever, to help you with whatever tech or stuff you need.
Yeah, which is super exciting. It lets you play around and be more, of an artist, so to speak, instead of, having to play a very mechanical, lifeless game. And you start to have a little more fun with it. Although, there's aspects. You're never going to enjoy everything like completely. No, But there are certain things that can excite you more than other things.
Yeah, but you can be aggressive, right? Because you can, if things take off, like you can hire top talent because their salary is like less than one sale a month.
Very, yeah. 100%.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, this would be another 1 or 2 hour conversation. I think if we would go into the AI stuff, which you probably also have some
Certain things we can, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, certain things I can talk about. Certain things that.
But anyways, that's I think we already have like 25 minutes left. So where I wanted to go into a little bit is like we talked now a lot about systems and the AI, right? But you're also still closing. I mean, you're not closing the deals yourself, but your company is, finding new deals, closing them. A while back, we talked about that you were running a VSL for yourself. What are you doing nowadays to acquire these like really high-end clients that are selling high ticket stuff?
It just depends. So at any given time, we're really only working with like under 15 clients.
Yeah.
It's usually like could be plus or minus one.
Yeah.
When that opens up, we have two things that we usually do. And again, everything is based around we want to do $1 billion a year in sales for our clients. So either we'll reach a point with the client where we're going to transition them out, either help them build an internal team and then go on their way because it's not going to help us hit our goal. Or
can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, so if a client just like in terms of operation, the CEO's ambition, what they want to do, how they want to do it, it's like if that company does not have the ambition of going to 30 million a year, 50 million a year, like $100 million a year, or we don't think that they have that capacity, at some point, we're going to bring on a new client that we can then scale past them, and then we'll transition that client out because it's just not worth our infrastructure and our time. It's just not.
Yeah.
And again, we'll set them up for success, help them build the internal team. Like we'll always do right by the people we work with, and they'll be very happy. But does that make sense though? Like we're going to transition new people in. Now, as far as we bring in, if there gets to a point where we're looking for new clients, there's usually people that have reached out that we have like
a list.
Kind of like a list of people. But I also love running ads. So anytime we open up to take on a new client, I'm always launching ads and we're going to bring in something new. I would say it's about 50-50. Sometimes when we do that, it's from like referral or from people that have reached out.
Yeah.
And then 50% is from ads. And the ROI on the ads is always clear. So it's not hard to get an ROI on that. And then after that, they shut off the ads and then come back to it later.
That's also one of those underground strategies where people don't really know what you're doing because you launch it, I guess, for 1, 2, 3 weeks and you most of the time fill it up. And
we have some stuff that we have an offer that's very, very interesting. So like one of the things that, like I told you, like the speed in which you can quickly and accurately identify problems in order of revenue generating potential. One of the key positions that we have within our business that's allowed us to do that is somebody, like, it's basically a data engineer, traditionally used very, very differently in companies.
Yeah.
But an offer that we're launching soon is we have a huge network of data engineers that have all like understand how to do what we do. It's one of the reasons why we've been able to cut costs on Meta. It's one of the reasons, like, they're so smart. They know some of the things that most marketers, like even like top tier, they have no idea because they don't understand how to look at the data in a way that these data engineers do. Mm-hmm. And so they know how to, they cut costs Meta by like 200% when we started bringing these people in. They are able to look at every facet of the business, like literally see at any given time where you're losing the most money, where you're making the most money, or where you can make the most money. And so we're launching an offer where we're going to start helping people source this specific position, which has been an absolute game changer for us. And we're going to be launching that soon. So that will be running ads, and that should be running all the time. But for our agency specifically, it's just on and off. Like
on and off. That's interesting. So you're like, that's almost the opposite of what most people are preaching or doing. But
our model gets paid, like we don't get paid more money for more clients. We find the right clients and then we get paid rev shares. So at least most people, I don't think, have the luxury of doing that. And you would never have a reason to shut it off. But for us, it's like,
I get it.
Makes sense for us.
Sometimes you're like, hey, we don't want to take anybody on because we want to stay super focused. And we know if we focus on these 2, 3 things, then it will really blow up and triple your revenue instead of getting another extra retainer that might take a year before it pays off. It doesn't make any sense.
No, for sure. 100%.
But I guess you also have proven by now that you have that system. So you always know, like, hey, can you always go back to that? Yeah,
no, 100%. But it's just repeating successful actions, but in a way that is all context based to our greater goal within.
Yeah. And that is to do $1 billion a year for your clients.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't need our agency to do $1 billion a year. I would love to do $1 billion a year for our clients with high ticket products.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you will get a percentage of that depending on how every deal is structured.
Of course. Yeah.
And then what are you gonna do? You're gonna buy a villa in Capri?
No, man. I love Colorado. I think, like ambitions, certain goals for 2025, like a jet, like a very nice jet.
Ah, okay.
Certain things like that are involved, but
And they can close that guy as well,
yeah, 100%. But aside from that, I think you reach a point where it's about playing a game that you get to grow in, and like literally, like it's about the sport, and it's about the thing, and like $1 billion a year is an arbitrary number. It's just in my head something that shows that like we've hit the next level playing pro ball in the marketing, and I don't think a lot of people can say the same. There are a few key players, but I want to be able to set apart.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's other games obviously and other things that we're doing this year, but my team is amazing. They run most of everything at this point within the agency, and they do an incredible job, and I think they're the best in the world at it. So now at this point, I just play the role of the caretaker, in certain ways the visionary, but they're stellar, man. They are savages, and so I'm very grateful for our team.
Got it. Yeah, and I was hoping that you would say something like interesting, like, oh, I want to get a jet, or I want to buy an island or something like that.
The jet's in the future for sure.
Yeah. You already know which one you want, or?
I think so. Yeah, I want to get a G650.
Okay.
Yeah, 2025 G650, but we'll see.
All right, sounds good. Before this, we talked a little bit about what you want to do with your brand. So I'm curious about that. You want to, your goal is like the $1 billion a year for your clients, for your partners, for your projects, and you brought a camera guy here, which is interesting because you are like, for me, it's so interesting that you're so low key and you're still doing great stuff, right? Which is not, or you don't hear about those people, right? Because they don't show it.
Yeah.
So what is your idea now, like you want to step in the spotlight? What is the next step in terms of content and documenting what you're doing?
Yeah, you know me. Like at the point of this being recorded, I have 2 posts on Instagram, and I'll post to my story occasionally. Yeah. Quite frankly, just because I've enjoyed growing my business and not having to spend the time, energy, and effort. Also because I think what most people do in terms of content is just not authentic to me. Not to say it's bad or good. Just I don't want to make the content here's how to do X, Y, and Z in your business. Biggest mistakes that X, Y, and Z companies make. Like that kind of content is not authentic to me. Although I think like there's some really credible people that are making content like that, and it helps a lot of people. It's just not for me. My vision is to create like very cinematic, like movie level, like high-end, like movie Netflix level content that does 2 things. I want to teach some of the principles and frameworks that I've learned along the way. I want to tell stories of people like myself that are low key, and I want to be able to tell those people's stories through content. Yeah. And then I want to make more like docu-style, like vlog, cinematic type content that teaches people things that are important to me, but more in an abstract way, in an artistic way, and it's more this long-term vision. I think most entrepreneurs would say like where will the ROI come in, but I think that it will play out long term. I think it will show a side of my life and what's possible, and some of the lessons that I learned, and it'll benefit like the people that spend the time and have appreciation for that type. But more of an artistic or cinematic approach to content versus a personal brand or like educational approach to content, if that makes sense.
Got it. But so you're saying that you also want to give people that are relatively unknown a stage.
Yeah,
That's where
as a part of it, and just
Yeah.
telling interesting stories of people that maybe even just in my network, maybe they have some stage, but I think there's a way to tell it in what I think will be very different.
Yeah.
Marketing, the universal like thing that we've heard 1,000 times is better isn't better, different is better, right? And
Yeah.
I wanna convey these things in a way that's not wrapped up in the same noise that I think is just being created, which is not bad or good. Everyone's gonna do their thing,
Yeah.
but for me, if I'm gonna do it, which I am intent on doing it, and we're gonna build a pretty badass operation from it, which I'm very stoked for. But I want to tell it in a way that's authentic to a more cinematic approach or a more emotional base, like so it cuts through and it can teach some of these things that I feel like, you know, just get wrapped up in a lot of the noise that people are just repeating the same thing over and over and over again in the same way over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And even if people are consuming the content, they don't remember it
Yeah.
because it's just another video in 100. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's when I started the podcast, I was like, man, it's really hard to get these golden nuggets out in the podcast. And that's also what you feel with a lot of podcasts. It's like they tell the same story over and over again. It's not really new or unique anymore. And then to go even deeper, that's what you're saying, right? To share their stories in an entertaining and beautiful way. I guess you're also kind of going to show the beauty in life a little bit by making it.
the multifaceted, the beauty, the pain, like all of it.
Yeah.
I wanna do something in a very cool way.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it.
That's
It's gonna
gonna be a
develop
great
in a very
challenge.
unique way. I've got the best team to be able to do it. I think it's gonna be, yeah, no, but actions speak louder than words though. So maybe by the time this
We'll
comes
see.
out or within the next couple months, people will start to see it.
Yeah, that's cool. And are you going to do it only organically, or are you also going to put some ad spend behind it?
Probably both. Yeah, we'll put some ad spend behind it for sure.
That's one of those things what I feel like is...
But on the right platforms too.
Yeah, of course,
It's got to be the right platforms.
But you get my point, right? I feel like that's something that not enough people are doing. It's like just, creating beautiful marketing art and then also putting some ad spend behind it because it's also direct response, right? But I think that's a great opportunity if you have more like a long-term vision where you want to go to...
Yeah, and it doesn't have to. You don't have to put an insane amount of ad spend
No.
behind something to make it work. So,
Yeah.
no, I think it's going to be very special. I'm looking forward to seeing how it develops for sure.
Nice. That's good stuff. All right, I see that we still have a little bit of time. So then I'm curious about if you had to change as a person in the last couple of months and what that was specifically for you, right? So what did you realize? Like, it's maybe not change as a person, but just change your habit or change your systems. Or like, hey, for me to go to the next level, let's say this year, I noticed I found this bottleneck and I had to change this. Is there anything big that stands out? Or is it just the small stuff like we talked about before?
Yeah, no, I'm trying to think.
Yeah, it's a hard
Um,
question.
There's I think there's a few things. The first is however you define your relationship with life will usually be how you live it and how you experience it.
Yeah.
I think there are some people that conceptualize life and like creating, whether they're growing their business as like it's a battle. They're in a war. They're in a fight and they're going to fight for it and they're going to do that. And for that person, that is true. And it is a way that they can create certain thing, but to me, fight creates more fight, conflict creates more conflict. In my life at this point, I'm not trying to play into the constant feedback loop of creating more conflict for the sake of ambition. I believe that there is a way for me to do everything that I want to do in a way that is more congruent to me, like as the analogy of like the caretaker or gardener, like that's what I believe in, and so I don't want to define life as a fight because constantly, as soon on the once you win the battle, there's another one, and once you win the battle, there's another one, and to be frank, like it's not to say you don't have to work hard. There's not another problem, like in the business equation or in life to solve on the other side of it. That's not the point. The point is that I believe that there is a more congruent way to go through and create the outcomes you want effortlessly, but it's very, very difficult to not get wrapped back into like, shit, like what do I need to do right now? Like what should I be working on? Like all these things, and you're constantly in this like this loop of just trying to keep finding like, it's almost like this constant like, what am I not doing right now that I should be doing?
Yeah.
Which is okay to a point because it keeps you aware. But if you played the game of already building a system that should be the cause to $8 million effect, and everything is in alignment, the ecosystem is, they're all producing the individual goals that they should, the answer is there should be nothing outside of you being in a place where you're just taking care of that. And so for me, yeah, right now, my focus is just trying to be aware of not falling into old habits that I believe create just more conflict. That is my biggest priority, because I think that there is always a range and a multitude of different ways to create an outcome, and a lot of times you're the one defining whichever those are. And you know, in the past, like just like you, I'm sure, like a lot of stress, like a lot of pain, like a lot of fight.
Yeah.
And I'm in a place where I still like, I'm willing to be present for the things that I want to create. I'm still gonna keep working hard, and I'm gonna still do these things and show up and be present. But I'm making sure that I'm not defining reality or life in a way that I think is going to be against what I'm trying to create, because I think conflict creates more conflict.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's my focus right now.
I'm quite visual, so how I envision it is like you transition from being a warrior to maybe being a gardener. Sounds maybe bad, but a gardener cannot fight the weather, right? But it can still plant the seeds and can work hard and work on the ground. Or like if you build a castle, or if you're a king, right? You are more in the, you are kind of surrendering to everything that's happening because it's outside of your control. But you're not fighting constantly. You're looking for your next battle.
For sure.
More coming to you. Yeah. So
Yeah,
gardener
sure.
or king, you can pick
Good.
which one. I like the gardener a lot, but it sounds a little bit, bad.
Yeah,
So
I think it's just however you conceptualize it, I think works. Remember, like for me, again, as like I said, I'm like sometimes delusionally optimistic, or like I have like my approach to things is just a bit different. But for me, whatever is true for you is true. It doesn't change anything. If you think that it's going to be a fight, it's going to be a fight, and you can win the fight. You create the outcome you want. It's fine. But I'm making sure to be as present as I can with like the goals that I want are uncommon. The things I want to create are uncommon. I don't think that it necessarily has to be this constant uphill battle. It's uncommon because of the way that you have to think about things and the person you need to become, what you need to believe, and the skills that you need to do. But you have to do that anyways. So why do you have to define it as a fight? Why does it have to be that way? And I just spent so much of my life fighting and playing into the conflict over and over and over again that, last 6 months, which incidentally, with that mindset, like I've made more money the last 6 months than I have at any point in my life, because, and maybe again, correlation isn't causation, but I think that it has something to do with it for sure.
Got it. So when the last minutes tick away, I want to still talk a little bit about your trading stuff. So you are working right now on trying to automate.
Yeah, it's done.
I mean, you automated your trading strategy / style.
Yeah.
So now you're testing it, or what's?
Yeah, no,
what's
I mean,
going on
it's like it's managing 40% of my money right now. So, at least in like what I do for trading. But yeah, no, I it's not for everyone, but I think that it's one of those things that if you can figure it out, then you're in a position where, shouldn't be teaching. Like, again, it's not, I don't believe in like teaching this stuff. Like only, like small amount of people know what I do as far as like trading goes.
Yeah.
But I don't believe that it's not for teaching. It is about how can I leverage the same amount of time and the same amount of effort to make more money. And trading, it's just a game. Once you have a system and you're able to do it, then it's just about capital.
Yeah.
So how do you get access to more capital? How do you get access to more capital? And so that's the sub game, one of the other games that I get to play, especially because, I can then bring that to the team. Like everything is to benefit, every ecosystem benefits each other. The trading benefits the core members of the team because of the agency, because they get to benefit. If it's automated, then I can get them a system that is able to benefit them. Or if the company has its own, basically is operating as its own entity with some money trading, then the team can pay the team, and they can benefit from some of these things as well.
Yeah.
So, I believe in taking care of the people that have always taken care of me, and so I've been working really hard to build a lot of different ecosystems that I think will benefit each other. So it's going to be a very interesting time, dude. But I'm very, maybe we'll come back in a year and we can talk about the things that have happened in the last year. I think it'll be a very interesting podcast.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I respect a lot about you. Like, you're doing this, like, let's call it marketing agency stuff, just to simplify it and me not having to explain 5 sentences. And you're also trading. And then you're also someone who actually takes the steps that I would expect most traders to take, right? You scale up your capital. That's the first thing. And then you're like, hey, let me see if I can actually automate it. Which for me is such a no-brainer. But I guess with you, like, starting your software company at 14, that was a really like a logical next step, and you took it, because most people, they don't, and you figured out a way to manage it, and it's working.
Just being a tech nerd, that was the logical next step, taking like my desire not to have to do just to focus on that. But also it's just, maybe it's the ADHD. I don't know, man. Life is very interesting like that.
Yeah. All right, man, I think we went pretty deep and pretty broad, and we shared some interesting nuggets.
It was awesome, man. You have some really good questions.
Thank you very much. I want to thank you for your time as well.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And let's see if we can do it again in a year from now.
For sure. Let's do it. Hopefully everyone got benefit. And again, if you're watching from home, like, the number one thing that I can always say, like, remember, if you can take anything out of this, it's that the relationship between cause and effect. Just be aware of the effect that's been created is the cause. And if you're looking at yourself, it's your identity, your skill set, and your mindset. Try to get rid of beliefs and be very cognizant of the things that you're trying to create. Try to become the cause that creates the effect. And as simple and maybe woo-woo as it sounds, I think it's the most practical way to actually approach creating outcomes consistently, instead of just focusing on action steps all the time. Focus on the causes and create the effects. But I only share that because I genuinely believe if I had that consistently going in my head when I started, I'd be way further than I am now. But Robin, I appreciate you, brother. This is a really good podcast.
Thanks. Cheers.
Cheers, man.